G'day, it's West Tigers Faithful, and I sound like Marge's sisters. This is Mosley, and he's our special guest for today. Say hi, Mosley.
There we go.
All right, Jared, over to you. Let's go.
West Tigers Faithful, episode 23. I've got the description as ugly but optimistic, but I don't know whether or not I'm going to call the episode that. We'll wait and see. Joe McCord, how are you, mate?
I'm pretty good. I have been in Sydney all week for work, lunging far too many diaries, so forgive the voice.
Well, it's fine, mate. What have you been doing? You on the road, expos and whatnot?
Yep. Trade show life. You know how it is. Well, maybe you don't, but basically just standing around in front of like branding and talking about pinch payments.
Speaking of,
our
sponsor for the day is the wonderful pinch payments. If you want to give
yes, absolutely.
Mandatory plug.
Mandatory plug. Yes, pinch payments. Australia's the number one rated payments platform in the Zero. Pinch payments is well suited to any service-based business that sends invoices and doesn't want to get their invoice payers paying them late anymore. Simply plug it into your Xero, QuickBooks or MYOB account and you too can collect your payments automatically every time. Get pinch.com.au.
Beautiful. How many times did you say that this week?
Well, I don't really say it like that because I don't tend to talk to human beings like an advertorial. I did at least once, I think. That
I just mean in terms of the content, I'm sure it will.
Oh, mate, just 5,000 times. But yeah.
Look, we've been keeping the people waiting all week. We were well behind. So we may as well just get straight into it. I don't really want to talk about Lachlan Galvin today. Clem is we'll talk about how he played and we'll talk about where he fits in the structure. But we're going to be talking about his future every week if we continue on with the circus. So I'm going to draw a line in the sand, and until there's a definitive thing to talk about, I'm not bothering with it. We went down to the Knights 10 points to 8. We scored one try and a penalty goal. We led by 8 points to 0 at half time. The Knights managed to score some tries and win the game in the end. So I basically split this up into positives and negatives, some things that I saw. We may as well start with the positives first, but first I've got to let my stupid dog out of the room because he wants to leave.
No, that's okay. While you talk, I'll just completely go against your will and talk about Lachlan Galvin.
Oh, all right then, go on.
Nah, just briefly. If we're going to make a commitment to never talk about him again, we might as well get it out like up front and then make the commitment, right?
Go on.
I'm personally of the view, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, that I kind of gave us very little chance of re-signing him anyway. So none of this really comes as a shock to me. I think what I can say to the fans, right, is that the media is going to paint this to be an anti-West Tigers thing. Everybody knows that. Just don't let it agitate you too much, because it's all very rational. Lachlan Galvin is probably going to price himself out of what we can afford to pay for a 6. Because, frankly, we have Latu Fino, who's probably going to be ready by the time Lachlan Galvin's gone. And it would be madness, honestly, to pay, what Lachlan Galvin's very likely to get on the open market from some of these other more desperate clubs than us, which sounds strange, but, Parramatta just losing Dylan Brown and stuff. So all I really wanted to say was, if what I think is going to happen does happen, which is us losing him, it's just unfortunately one of those situations. I think there's a lot to be said yet about, who's the better player between Galvin and Fino. So, the jury's even out on that yet. So, but, maybe he stays as well. But in my view, I don't think it's going to be, it's going to be made out to be a bigger deal than it is.
Yeah, good point. Look, we've been here before. It stinks of everything that happened with the so-called Big Four. Everybody knows what Isaac Moses does, and he will leave no stone unturned, ethical or unethical, to ensure that his client gets the best deal at the best club. So, look, as you said, he's going to go to market in November. Whatever happens, happens. We actually have a contingency plan, and with strong leadership in place, we're not going to lose the equivalent of Tamare Martin this time around when the equivalent of Mitch Moses leaves. Okay, so you can take solace in the fact of that, and we can talk about balance and structure later on, because that's a genuine Galvin chat that I want to have. So moving on, look, the negatives kind of outweighed the positives for me last week. So I'll kick off the positives first. We can take a lot out of that first 40. We were gritty, we were controlled, and we were committed. And we actually won the field position battle, which was really nice. The problem was that in the second 40, we lost control and failed to ice our opportunities. And obviously we fell off a lot of tackles. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah. For me, I think that the composure was lacking. I think that we were in the grind and really winning the grind. And it wasn't until we started trying to kind of, overplay a bit, that I think that the wheels started falling off. So rather than being comfortable kind of, staying in that grind, sticking to the structure, just playing the game simply, we kept trying to find the try, and I think that was kind of what was actually causing us to not score points, because that first try came really easily, we didn't even go back to Skelton in a one-on-one again the entire game when we were deep on the attack. So yeah, I think there was clunkiness to the attack. We would have won that game if we scored one more try. So it's disappointing in that respect, but I think what we can probably take away from it from a positive perspective is that we only held them to 10. Newcastle did play last night again, and they scored a lot more tries against the Dolphins than they do against us. And they're a good side, I think. I actually think that they probably came into this season a little bit under the radar, and I think that 10-8 scoreline might end up aging pretty well.
I don't disagree. Obviously, they've had another week to build combos, and they certainly look much better last night. But I do tend to agree with you. I think that come second half, we probably played a little bit too negatively. That's where you kind of want Jerome Luai to step up and take control, and I felt like he probably delegated a little bit too much. I don't think that's going to happen in the weeks to come, but he had to learn that lesson really, really quickly. I thought in the first half he was in everything. He saved a try. He threw the decisive pass to set up the Skelton try. He did some great things. He kicked really, really nicely, when we got a roll on. But then it sort of felt like when on the attack in the second half, he was happy to delegate, or, obviously the 7-tackle set, which we'll get to, there was just a couple of little times where, we probably needed him to be a little bit more positive and take the game by the scruff of the neck. But I think that, again, he's a quick learner and he's a winner. So I think that he'll iron that out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat from him this week. He's like the fourth most winningest player in the history of the game.
Yeah, so again, I'm not too worried. He was going to take a week or two, especially not playing a trial. I'm confident that he'll be all right. Look, Marshall at the end of the game in the presser sort of spoke about certain parts of our game improving, and I agree. Effort areas, for the most part, were where they needed to be. They did scramble. The yardage game was good, particularly in the first half. The second half, the Knights tended to get a bit of a roll on, and they actually ran for more metres than us in the end. And our kicking game from midfield was strong. I think a lot of those, we brought a lot of these players in to fix a lot of these problems, and they did that. Rel May was obviously our best player on ground, but behind him was probably Skelton and Taruva. They played beautifully and really, really stood up. And furthermore, again, there was a couple of Luai kicks. One was the grubber to the in goal where Ponga got out. That's just the class of Kalen. That happens. But also the 7-tackle set. It was one of those things where, unfortunately, by the slightest of margins, we were off, and that's what cost us. And that can happen in round one when passes aren't sticking and the overlaps aren't coming as easily because you're not committing the defenders and so forth. Do you agree there?
Well, I kind of think that the game kind of played out a little bit like how both of us predicted, to be honest, because I kind of had, I made this, the point last week that I thought Newcastle might actually struggle to score points because I felt like that they were going to target this like most obvious areas.
Yeah.
So even though they, constantly created chances and they were very threatening and got a lot of tackle breaks and stuff like that, because it was pretty obvious where they were focusing on, I think that our scramble was able to kind of, accommodate that and, over focus on that area. And that kind of was why we were able to actually stop the points from being scored. But at the same time, I think they played the game plan that you predicted, that they were going to play very structured and to the, to keep the game plan quite simple and, try to kind of, win by one or two tries. And I think, I kind of expected that they were going to come out and play a lot more upbeat and a lot more up tempo and with a lot more energy and try to kind of actually like stack on some points because I felt like they needed to. I felt like that they would kind of, based on last year, I think that when we were playing rigid to a structure, we were really always struggling to score points, and I didn't really want to see a repeat of those red zone woes from last year. I didn't want to see a repeat of, us, lacking creativity and, having an over-reliance on Lachlan and things like that. But unfortunately, that's how it panned out. So, I agree with your sentiment about Luai delegating too much. I think that it's pretty silly if it continues because we've paid him top dollar to be a marquee player, and having him essentially play Aiden Caesar's role from last year would be a pretty silly thing to spend $1.2 million on.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that our attack will change this week, and we'll talk about it more when we preview the Eels game. But ever since Heath Mason came into grade, we tend to park him on the right-hand side, and he's almost the right-sided half and holds up a man sort of at A or B on the right-hand side of the ruck. And then Lachlan actually does the fullback sweeping, of which I don't think he has the speed, nor does he play straight enough to do that. And as a result, it allowed Newcastle to contain us. If you get a guy like Jerome Buller, who's a lot more fleet-footed and plays a lot straighter, I do think that the field will open up a little bit more. Now, that's me purely speculating, but again, given off what I have seen through preseason and how we used to play when Jerome Buller was playing in a similar structure to what we produced in round one, I get the feeling that Lachlan will play right-hand side and therefore we'll have Jerome sweeping both sides and we keep Galvin away from the left because, as we've spoken about, too much of our point scoring ability hinged on one man, and that's never a good sign. Now, Jerome delegated, but Galvin was taking the wrong option sometimes or didn't have the speed his opposite in 2 minds, and it really showed. I wanted to bring something up that I saw that you say where it was effectively Galvin because he's like sweeping, from one side to the other, and we're relying on his fitness to create quote unquote artificial overlaps. It's almost like he doesn't really have the time to make a decision. Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I noticed that like Galvin pretty much like, he'll be on the left, say, and, in charge of the play there. And then they'll stack the right and try to do like an immediate sweep. And Galvin like literally just gets on his bike and he'll like run from like halfway across the left-hand side of the field all the way to halfway across the right-hand side of the field in a single play, and does it over and over and over again, like all game long. And I look at that as like I kind of think that they're trying to weaponize his fitness. That they're trying to kind of like, take advantage of the fact that the kid's got an endless ability to kind of just run and run and run, which we know because of his preseason testing and stuff like that. And him doing that over and over and over again, it was creating overlaps every time, because it's very hard to compensate for somebody who never gets tired and can just always do that. So over time, eventually it's going to work. And in fact, it worked almost every time I saw it in the sense of like it created the scoring opportunity. And it was like, it was working from the start of the game. Like it was, on one of the very first sets of the game that I noticed that he got across the right-hand side, and there was an overlap created, and instead of like dishing it out to Seyfarth, who pretty much had like a 3-on-2 at the time, he dribbled it in behind the ruck because Bradman Best crashed in on him because Best realized he was screwed. Best had no choice but to basically run up and just go and hope that Galvin, had a panic attack. And he put in a kick which the overlap caused such a like high percentage opportunity for us that even with the kick it could have worked if he angled it a little bit differently. Like it was like Best rushed up and he's like, oh, Best rushing up, I'll kick into where Best was. But then he didn't account for the fact that Kalen Ponga is like, Kalen Ponga, right? So Kalen Ponga is in position. If he had have angled it a little bit more to the right, Fatape could have come through and got it before Ponga got there. But if he dishes it out to Seyfarth instead of kicking it either straight away or when he actually like goes to the line to fake the kick and still dished it, like Seyfarth was an option that was going to cause an overlap the whole time.
Yeah.
No point did Galvin even think about passing it to him. I didn't even see him look at him. He pretty much like caught the ball and like his first instinct is always to catch and run. Like he hasn't got the catch and pass in him, which you saw Luai do, which led to our only try. Like when Luai actually took the ball off the 12 offload, Luai dished it out to Dewey quick, straight away. And it's not because Luai was trying to create like an overlap or like, get a player into space. He just wanted to get the ball to like a one-on-one. He wanted to get Skelton one-on-one with the winger because he knows Skelton one-on-one with the winger is going to score. Or even Dewey one-on-one might score half the time.
That's right.
So Galvin's always trying to basically create a clean space instead of like, just dishing it to a man in a better position than him. But yeah, so he dishes it to Seyfarth there and I think that they most likely score. He just passes it to Fatape and Fatape probably just, what Fatape is like in open space one-on-one. He's very hard to stop.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And furthermore, this speaks to the fact that when Galvin was kicking in behind it just felt like he was premeditating a little bit. If he's not taking the ball to the line, he's kicking, and the angle's not correct. And look,
well, then Reedie, there was one on the left-hand side not long later where we created an overlap in a very similar situation, and Mason was out the back.
Yeah.
So Mason's on the left, and he again takes it all the way to the line. I think that half the problem on that play was that Mason didn't get outside of Samuela's shoulder quick enough.
Yeah, okay.
Because if he had have dished it to Mason on time, Mason would have been on Samuela's inside shoulder and probably got pinged. But I don't know if Galvin actually noticed that, to be honest. I might be being a bit optimistic about his vision, but he goes all the way to the line, and instead of popping it out the back to Mason, who literally at that point would have had Dewey and Skelton on the outside, and he was like gonna run straight for the center, so he would have had them 2-on-1. He just pops it to Samuela, who just crashes into two men. So like even when he does pass, it's because he's, and it's to your point, right? I think the problem is that he's arriving just on time because he's not super quick, but he's not super quick. So he's arriving just on time and then catching the ball, and like his immediate natural instincts when he catches the ball is to run because he's always been like that. It's just how he is as a player. He's a running six and he was a back rower. So his natural instinct isn't to shuffle the ball. He's been trained to do hit-ups. His natural instinct is to catch the ball and run with it. And so like if you're just trying to create like a link man play, you have to have quick hands. You have to be able to quickly sum things up and make quick decisions. And if his first instinct is to catch the ball and run with it, then sometimes the opportunity passes him by. And even when it doesn't pass him by, he's still like instinctively not quite making the correct decision.
Well, I completely agree. So a lot of the time, the Knights actually had us numbered up on that left edge, right, when we'd sweep out of the back and it was 3-on-3. But the thing is that you've got three big bodies there, right? You've got Lachlan himself, who is a big body. You've got Adam Dewey, who can skittle a defender. And you've got Jarrell Skelton, who bodied James Schiller when he scored, right? So that's the other thing that I never see from Lachlan, where I'm actually, more than anything, I'm reaching and I'm hoping that it's Jareem that's sweeping on those left-sided plays. Because I know that he's going to give early ball because he's more than happy to give it. Lachlan being the running 6/back rower he was, he doesn't say, all right, I'm actually going to enable this bloke to create the gap. I'm just going to commit the man in front of me, and then I'm going to have these boys 2-on-1. And if Adam, who was the 6 himself, can commit the winger or get Jarrell 1-on-1, then there's an opportunity, for us to do something. That was something that really disappointed me. There was such a big, we had big bodies on that edge, and Weller included, and it just felt like we just took the wrong option constantly. Now, in Galvin's defence, he's 19, he's only played a season, and sometimes the gaps just don't appear the way you want, but it just felt to me like with the kicks and stuff that either he got the angle wrong or it just felt like he was premeditating. But in his defence, he is a quick learner from what I've seen. I saw him last year very, very quickly pick things up. And with the 9-day turnaround we have, and the more time to do video and work with the players around him, I'm really hopeful that we see an improvement.
Yeah, I think so, Jared. I think last year we saw Lachlan throw a lot of flat balls to the winger, right? He can do it. He can, but so far this year he seems overly reliant on popping the short ball to Sam Weller. I haven't really seen him pop the ball out the back too much. On the right hand side, he doesn't even seem to ever want to pass. So he doesn't seem naturally inclined to pass the ball left to right really at all. Well, probably right hand sided player.
That's something we need to speak about. I'm hopeful that with Buller and Uppy there, the Galvin is parked on that right hand side. Because it was something like Bradman Best only made 5 tackles all game. Dane Gagai made about 20. How on earth can you expect to score points when teams are just going to do their video and double team Lachlan Galvin and that left hand and our left hand side there right because they know that it's coming. That's schoolboy stuff. Again, I understand. Once again, Heath Mason, they seem to limit his output in attack. I'm confident that we see something different. But again, if we don't have Jareem and Heath comes back into the side, then opposition teams are going to go, well, we know what's coming, and and it's going to limit our point scoring opportunities. Another thing that is going to limit our point scoring opportunities is if Uppy Coruscant cops an injury for an extended period, we will be in serious strife.
Don't even say it. Don't even put it out there in the universe.
Touch wood. Manifesting 24 game. I'm manifesting a 28 game season for Uppy, all the way through to the big dance. He's so important to our attack, and both Talon and Tristan Hope both showed that they just don't have the class currently required to do it for long minutes. Reedie's had a couple of times. Twal copped shit for dropping the ball 10 out from the line after, I think it was our first or second set after points. And realistically, he shouldn't have been getting the ball in the first place. Two middles had actually committed those defenders, and there was an overlap on the outside. That ball should have went straight into Luai's hands. We'd probably score again. The other time it showed was the set 15 out from full time where, we just looked directionless and the hookers just weren't committing those players in the middle or even the foreman, which is typically the back rower, to get them to come up to create an overlap. Uppy is so crucial to that, to commit, to get, these opposition players to commit to a decision. And as a result, that's why there wasn't gaps on the edges and things weren't coming as easy. And it was clear that they really expected those gaps to be there because they trained with Uppy all preseason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it would be madness to think that if Uppy on his own or Buller on his own wouldn't have given us at least one more try, i.e. winning that game, right? So we get one more try, win that game, where and Uppy and Buller are I don't know, you can probably make an argument that they're our two best attacking players. I know that Lachlan's great and Luai's great, but are they as good of attacking players as Jareem Buller and Uppy Coruscant? I don't know, so it's definitely an argument to have. So, yeah, I agree. That's enormously important to us. I thought Talon and Hope played all right. I actually think that they improved in areas that I had concerns about. I think that both of them were distributing the ball quite okay. It was out in front as it needed to be. And I think that Talon in particular had a really good stint. I think Talon, might actually, be better suited to being off the bench at this point. And I think that pulling that rein by starting with Hope was a good thing. But yeah, by and large, I think I agree with you. I think Uppy will just pull the right rein. He's a bigger threat with his feet. You know, he can just pluck a try out of nothing at least once a game just by just being deceptive with like a slow marker or something. And just that one extra try per game might be the difference between a lot of wins and losses for us this year.
I completely agree. Look, Talon did some really good things. That tackle that he made on Kai Pearce-Paul out from halftime
that was a ripper.
That was a bell ringer, and that's what he's capable of. So why can't we see that in the middle? I know that he's young. I totally get it, and he's learning his craft. But Benji should be in his ear saying, we need that from you on every play.
He needs to learn how to do that, like, you know, to a high degree of, he needs to do that more often, and he needs to learn that in reserve grade. Like, it's gonna be hard for him to learn how to like play out a full 80 and not have those lull periods if he's not playing 80.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I would like to see him play probably 15, 16 games in grade this year and then go down and have an 80-minute blowout in reserve grade, you know, when required, when it looks like he needs it. Look, I agree with you. I think he's suited to the bench role really nicely. There were some times where we get a quick play of the ball and he was straight out, and he's so fast and his footwork is great and he's going to score tries off it. It reminds me of Lids. You know, early in his career. It's really, really
last week.
yeah. I mean, that was awesome to see. Can I just? That was awesome. But you know, with Tal, it's sort of like, mate, like you're an absolute weapon. It's just that we need this from you on every play, and you know that's reminiscent of a young kid learning his trade. But he was responsible for, you know, he played a role in what is the elephant in the room. We haven't spoken about it, and that's the 55 missed tackles. Look, I will say this, as Matty Johns actually said through the week, missed tackles aren't always missed tackles. The Dogs last year actually averaged around 40 missed tackles a game. They would fall off tackles, but they would scramble hard. But the problem is that when you miss 55 as opposed to 40, there's going to be breaks and so forth. I remember our team review last year, we were averaging, I think it was six line breaks a game. We conceded 6 line breaks, you know, last week. That's just quite frankly not good enough. And you know, there's some really, really silly lapses that are hurting us. Like Fanua Bole is a starting front rower in the NRL. I know he's young, but 9 missed tackles as a front rower in the National Rugby League. It's 9. It's not up to standard. Like that's just quite frankly not good enough. And there was even efforts where he didn't lay a hand on a player and they went straight past him. The Dylan Lucas break, which led to the Fletcher Sharp try. Alex Seyfarth's at second marker. Fanua Bole's at A, you know, that could have been avoided. You know, if Alex knows the ball's probably going to be zipped, if he's the third man in the tackle, he just needs to peel off. He needs to get out of there and set that right edge. You know, he really needed to get there. The James Schiller break was disgusting. That actually wasn't Fanua or Alex Seyfarth. It was Jerome Luai and Adam Dewey. That just was not good enough. The misses on Sharp and Marju for both tries were hairy. Jack Bird tried really, really hard. I was impressed with him, but that miss, you know, extremely disappointing. Some of the arm grabbing showed by some of the boys in the middle that scrambled back onto our line where Fletcher Sharp took the ball out of hooker. That wasn't good enough either. You know, 37 tackles missed in the second half, like, you know, with the game in the balance. That just simply cannot happen. It's not good enough. And look, we can be proud of our scramble and you can fall off tackles, as I said, but, you know, missing tackles in the manner in which we did, where a player would break 3 or 4 tackles and zip downfield, that's not good enough, and that's a whole team issue. I don't think it's necessarily attitude, but I think it's technique. And they need to fix that very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think, I'm in a hotel room and I just decided to turn the light off. And I think that the Dolphins missed 39 tackles against Newcastle last night. You know, obviously not as many as us, but still pretty large number. Newcastle are probably going to make a lot of teams have high missed tackle counts because they have Kalen Palmer and they have Bradman Best. And, you know, outside of that, they have Marju and they have James Schiller, who's underrated, and he can definitely like make some breaks. And so they're an attacking powerhouse. That's not to make excuses because 55 is not good enough against Newcastle, like much less any team. I agree with most of what you said. There was nothing there that I disagree with. I think that it starts with the middle though, and I don't think we can continue to afford to have Fanua Pole missing that many tackles as a starting prop. It just doesn't work. If we're not like, you know, establishing dominance in the middle, then it just has a flow-on effect, not just like logically and tactically, but also mentally. If your toughest player is not able to actually like dominate or at least stand up, and make strong tackles in the middle, it gives you the impression that the other team is dominating. And when you feel like the other team's getting on top of you, it makes things more difficult. Similar to what I was saying last week about like mindset. If you come to work and everybody keeps telling you crap, you'll be crap. It's like if you look around and your team are getting rolled, you're gonna get rolled. So it's osmosis. It's like a big flow-on effect. I think Terrell, May, and Wall are more than capable starting middles. They're both high minutes players. I think Bolle is better suited as a bench impact player. Bolle and Hunt would be two of the best bench impact props in the NRL. May and Twal, I think honestly, more than half of the NRL would probably be okay with them being starting middles. I think that's the rotation I would go with, and maybe Jack Bird at 13 for now. Or maybe Jack Bird at 13 with Latu Fainu on the bench to come on and play 6 with Galvin moving into 13 after a while, something like this. But there's a few other, I don't think, the problem with it is that we miss so many tackles across the whole team that there's no way we're going to fix the whole thing. We just have to fix the parts that are going to have the biggest impact in a cumulative way. So fixing Bolle is one way, making sure that we don't have weaknesses next to one another all across the field is another. And I think that there's something to be said about potentially whether Luai and Galvin themselves, they're both too weak defensively to be halves, because you can't really carry 2 weak halves, 2 weak defensive centers, a weak middle, 2 back rowers that miss a fair bit. You got to find somewhere else to get a zero. You know what I mean? So aside from just having May and Twal as the zeros, we need to have a center who's a zero. We need to have one of the halves that's a zero. We need to have one of the back rows that's a zero, and that might need to come at the cost of some attacking impetus. But it obviously, attack is easier when you are defending well and the opposition's getting frustrated. So it's tough. Part of me thinks Latu Fainu is a better defender than Lachlan Galvin. So at least he hits harder. He's more in a straight line. He'll put people on their backs. Fatape being out for Toa. Toa looked pretty good defensively in the trial, I thought. So hopefully Toa can do that, decrease the missed tackle count there on Fatape's side. Outside of that, Sam Weller's a little bit of defensive liability, I think. I feel like if we had more options in the back row, he might be in he might be probably in Sione's role at the moment and not necessarily starting in the back row. But I don't know. There's a lot to work on there. I think that I just don't think that we have the cattle to solve that problem well enough yet.
I agree. We've spoken about it a few times. Defense is 70% commitment and attitude. I think that they showed commitment and attitude, but that last 30% is technique, so contact, wrestle, those sorts of things. I agree with you, except for the fact that I think that Jerome, for the most part, is a good defender. He tends to make good reads. He understands shapes. He actually marshals his edge pretty well, evidenced by the fact that they didn't score any tries down his edge, or, there was the Schiller line break down his edge, but, both tries were scored down the right, which we were pretty concerned about. I do agree with you, though. Defence wins comps, and we're probably still one key forward away at 13 from really shoring up the middle. Twal, Sione, and Terrell May, I don't think they missed a tackle between them. I think Royce missed one, which is pretty good, but Fanua and Talon and Jack Bird missed a few. And, Benji's going to have to find a way to either bring someone in or rotate them in such a way that we have strong defenders out on the park all the time. So that's something that he's going to have to work with. Samuel is young and learning his craft. At the end of the day, he's going to play 80. They're going to trust him and they're going to ride the wave with him. But I agree with you. I think that probably Alex Seyfarth's a guy that they need to look at and really hope that either one, he improves astronomically, or two, a back rower comes on the market that can actually roll with the big boys. Toa, as you said, he's excellent. Dewey, we're worried about, but we can't do anything until Brent Naden comes back.
Real in May.
Well, I don't want to talk about that. Taruva, I was really impressed with his commitment. Obviously, he's a small body, but he did some good things. And Skelton can put on a bell ringer, but still looks like a deer in headlights in an overlap. But it actually didn't get to that point last week, which I was happy about. So, look, again, attitude and commitment was good, but you can't fall off tackles the way that we did. And I really hope it's nipped in the bud because, there is absolutely a concern there that, like we had, through preseason, that there's not enough defenders in this side. But so be it. Look, to sum up, it was ugly. I think they missed, half the spine being out, and that was the main thing. But, we showed for that first 40 that we can get in the grind and we can look comfortable. And that's a credit to, the players, but also the coaching staff to get us to that point. But the issue was that second half, we just did not put them away. We fell off some tackles, which was really, really disappointing. And ultimately, it was our lack of decisiveness in attack and falling off tackles in defence that cost us. So let's hope that they're quick learners. Anything else?
Yeah. It's a lot of doomsaying. It's a lot of negativity, but how many sides in the NRL would win a game against Newcastle without their starting 1 and 9?
Totally understandable. A lot of them would probably struggle. And Newcastle were full strength and, they beat us. And that was because they were the better team when it counted. So credit to them.
I think the more to the point, Jared, is the fact that game was in the balance and winnable, despite the fact that we didn't have Api Coruscant. The fact that we didn't have Jerian Buller might actually be a promising sign. I look at the stats and the 55 missed tackles and I go, how did it only end up 10-8? And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they are playing for each other now and that they do have on-field leadership and that they didn't give up and that they did play out a full 80, really. I mean, it wasn't a quality last 40 minutes, but there was no big lull period or anything like that. There was just execution at the wrong moment. So I do think that Jerome Luai is having a big impact on the side, even if it didn't really look like it.
I agree, and a lot of the experts, the sharper minds, actually saw a lot of really good things. Eddie Johns, let me find it. Wrote something really, really good about us. Yeah, in his weekly Telegraph columns. Last Friday, Luai's West Tigers debut performance received mixed reviews. There was plenty of rust, but I believe that I saw enough that he will be every bit the player the Tigers need him to be in 2025. Creatively, he was almost operating solo without the man whom he will form the strongest, most important combination in Api Coruscant. Lachlan Galvin went in and out of the context. He's a young six still finding his legs. But there's no doubt that halves combination will develop quickly. Luai was strong in the first half, setting up the Tigers' only try and saving one. In the second half, playing behind a pack which had lost its superiority, his impact lessened, and a kick error of a matter of inches gave Newcastle a 7-tackle set, which led to them scoring a crucial try. In the coming weeks, I believe that Luai will have the Tigers looking like a completely different team. I think that's a pretty fair write-up. And look, we've been burnt before, and there's been a million false dawns, but when you get one of the sharper rugby league minds coming out and saying that, that's really nice. Another thing he had to say was, while the stats say the Tigers missed, he says 68 tackles, they only conceded 2 tries. I was really impressed with their defensive attitude, signalling a significant lift in desire. While the defensive energy was there, individual technique and communication contributed to the Tigers missing vital tackles in the second half, with costs of victory. With Coruscant and fullback Jerian Buller returning on Sunday, expect a performance which will give the Tigers supporters a surge of optimism.
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely this weekend based on Parramatta's performance last week.
Oh.
One thing that I said a lot last year was that sometimes, you just need one player in defence to stand up and make a defensive play. And it can actually, you can miss as many tackles as you wanted to set, but if somebody on tackle 4 just puts a hit on and knocks the ball out, then who gives a fuck about all those missed tackles, right?
That's right.
I saw a lot of that. There was a lot of individual, like that talent hit you mentioned. There was a lot of individual big defensive efforts coming from players who were going, you know what, I'm going to be the guy. And the more of that, the better. I've been thinking a lot since our last episode about that, like, observation about how Penrith have like 17 on-field leaders, and last year we had none. I feel like that. I feel like that there's a lot to that, and I hope to see a lot more leadership from other individuals, because it feels like that there's a lot of players in the West Tigers top 17 at the moment that need leading, and that's not a great thing. And we need them to kind of like, grow up a bit.
I agree. Well, to Matty's point, we're expecting a better performance that'll give us some optimism. So let's flip it. Playing against the Eels on Sunday, it'll be an absolute scorcher, 35 minutes. 35 degrees, which speaks to the fact that we need to play smart football. Your discipline has to be good. You have to limit errors. You have to kick the corners, and you have to turn the opposition forward pack around. Drinks breaks may halt momentum on either side, but the key is simply just sticking in the grind. Parramatta, look, they have points in them. Of that, there's no doubt. The Tim Sheen special, they won the second half on the weekend after Melbourne put the queue in the rack. But there is points to be scored. Dylan Brown, he's just gone and signed the richest NRL deal in history, but he's been at that club since he was 15, and now that it's all sorted, it could go one of two ways. He could absolutely stink it up, or he could just set up tries and score tries at will. So beware the wounded beast. You've got to be mindful of those sorts of things. Again, the heat can bring things up, and if you invite pressure, teams will punish you. It's as simple as that. And with guys like Penasini and Lomax and Iongi, who looks a wonderful ball player, and Dylan Brown, you cannot sleep on this Parramatta side if they get in the red zone. But again, they've got a halfback that can't kick the footy, and they've got an undersized forward pack. So providing you don't invite that pressure, I think you can score. I think we can win this game and win well. So where we can win, we've got our full strength side on the park. I think that you could make an argument for Brent Naden to replace Adam Dewey, but to be quite frank, I think that's inconsequential. The most important piece to our attack is back. Our hooker and spiritual leader, a guy that uses his deception, his body language, and his ruck ID to manipulate opposition defenders to either create tries through the middle or create overlaps and opportunities out to the edges. So that is a massive thing for us. I think he's while he missed the most tackles in the league last year, he's a better defender than talent. He will shore up the middle a little bit more, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. It's a 9-day turnaround, and I'm happy that we've got it this early in the season. It gives us time to nail combinations. I expect to see improvements on both sides of the ball, given that these boys will have another week. And look, again, effort areas were up. They played for 80, as you mentioned. Signs are good for the most part. It's just making sure that we put together these 80 minutes on the day. And I think the desperation of guys like Terrell, Jerome, and Tito wanting to win their first game in these colours will ensure that no complacency is felt. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Parramatta are probably the worst on paper side that I've seen in a very long time. I don't think it matters if Dylan Brown plays good. Like, I don't expect him to play bad. Like, he's a good player. He's a little bit overrated, if you ask me. I think if you ask a lot of people, but he's not a terribly. He's an above average player on his worst day, I think, personally. But like, it's not like he's gonna be able to single handedly take that roster and have them perform. I don't think. I think that this one's ripe for the picking. Gee whiz, I was optimistic last week and I got burned. So the only thing that's stopping me from being optimistic this week is that I got burned last week. It's I just feel like that we really should be able to just beat them anywhere we want. We should be able to just overrun them through the middle if we want. I think that that's where it probably needs to start. Like, I feel like if we try to establish dominance, like for the first 5-10 minutes in the middle, just really run hard, no silly errors in defense for the first 5 or 10 minutes, they'll drop their level pretty quick. And at that point, I think that we should be able to just put a few on.
I hope you're right. On the flip side, where we can lose, look, we're the Tigers. How many times have we been favourites and we've lost these games? That's absolutely a concern and something that's happened. All signs point to it being a quote. That's right. Only round one, but beware. As I said, this side does have points in them, and if we give them momentum or a roll on, they'll score points. And Dylan Brown, which I mentioned. Look, other than that, Zach Lomax, everybody's going, oh, he's a winger, not a centre, and he was terrible last week. Well, you know what? He carves us up every time he plays us. So get ready for him to at least score one. So he absolutely loves carving us up. So to anybody who, wants to debate about whether he's a winger or a centre, he's going to look like a centre this weekend.
Mate, come on.
Anything else?
It's Jared. Like, we lost last week close. We got a 9-day turnaround. We got Appy back. We got Buller back. We got Toa back. We got Parramatta, who pretty much, they know that they're going to not make the 8. They already know their season's over. They're not going anywhere this year. They know this. The whole club knows it. They've literally dropped their entire starting forward pack to reserve grade so that they can, tell them to fuck off. As if that's not Riles just signaling go find another club to half of the senior players. What happened to us last year when that happened, when Richo did that?
Yeah,
right?
You're right. Yeah, we dropped that bundle. I get that.
Mate, Para have no chance. There's no... I'm sorry. For
All right, give me a score line before we go to the pathways.
I reckon 46-10.
All right, I'm going 34-16 in favour of the Tides. I've got it this week.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not often I say that.
Yeah, you're a pretty negative person.
I think I'm a realist. The last 13 years have probably conditioned me as such.
Fair enough.
Pathways, Cup, look, they were pretty ugly defensively. There's no two ways to cut it. Some of the statistics of our full-time contracted players were not up to standard. The middles, I think, did their job. Tim Johansson, Vaka, Kit Lauliti had some good moments, although I would have preferred his work rate to be a little higher. Charlie Murray had a good game. Justin Matamua did not. Noah had a good game. Sometimes was a little bit too keen to throw the offload, but I love that about him. The willingness to create second phase, and he'll learn in time when to throw it and when to not. But there were, as for the outside backs, there was a clear mismatch in size, and that really worries me. We're a better side on paper this week, but it just does not bode well for the year ahead. Speaking of sort of size mismatches, Solomone Sekuru is a big boy, but his lateral movement is just not up to standard, to be an outside back. I think it's time to move into the back row. Let's park him in flag and just give him a season, and let's just see if he can do it. He's a classy player. He's got the ability to produce some really nice touches, but he just can't defend in the outside backs against grown men. The class of Will Price showed. And he really put his stamp on this game. He is a phenomenal attacking footballer, and if he fixes up his defence, he's going to be a really, really good player. On the flip side, Latu did some good things, but he just didn't put his stamp on the game the way Will Price did, and that's the knock on Latu. Sometimes he just doesn't take the game by the scruff of the neck, and he needs to stand up, especially in this grade. So, disappointing that the game is in the balance at halftime and we just fell away. But again, there are some concerns about size and a class mismatch in these outside backs. I think, we've named a better team this week, but against the Parramatta side that's arguably stronger than their first grade side on paper, I don't anticipate that this is going to get better anytime sooner. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't watch the game, but it was a very disappointing result. Our squad, our New South Wales Cup team on paper looks very strong, and it probably had more first grade experience in it than the Newcastle one. Yeah, it was a very disappointing result. I looked through the stats. I thought that it was pretty evident that a couple of the forwards just did not put in. I thought just by looking at the stats, Kit Lauliti only had 7 carries or something, as a starting middle. That's not really that's worse than Utokumanu's first grade stats. Who I will add was probably looked like a Tiger stat line, even though Melbourne put on a thrashing. So anyway,
it looked like Melbourne's worst player.
I didn't watch the game. I just saw his stat line and I was like, oh, okay. Doesn't look like he's much different. Anyway, I feel like that Parramatta is probably not the team that we would really want to be facing in round 2, considering what I just pointed out about who they've dropped. They've got Madison. They've got Cartwright.
Geimer at 13. I think Wiramu Griggs playing in the front row. Yeah, it's I just
I think
want
Lussick's playing 9.
they've got Dean Hawkins at 7, who I think is probably too good for that level. Yeah, I think it might be a tough day out for our Cup boys. I'd love to see them stand up, and I'm really interested to see Heath Mason and Latu Finu's combination in the halves. But I worry. And
I worry too. I think that I feel like if our forwards all show up on the day with a good attitude, we have a chance. But like if we have to carry a few passengers in the pack like we did last week. I know I'm a big Johansson fan, but I don't get why they dropped Noah Johansson. His stat line was better than like the other starting middles aside from his brother. I know he popped some errors, but like you need somebody who can actually bring some spark in that way, and he's not going to improve in that aspect playing Ron Massey Cup.
I'd expect him to carve this week. He made an unreal line break. I think State Cup's his level. I'm just hoping that he's just been put back down there to work on a couple of things, and he bounces back up. I think Vakaraho had a great game. I thought Charlie Murray had some good touches. Again,
who is Charlie Murray?
So he used to play for East Tigers. He was a Richo recruitment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a lock forward. Won a comp with Tristan Hope and Solfar Tape. So, he's rightly been picked at 13 this week. It looks like, with the exception of Noah, Aaron's rewarded the right players. I don't know where Justin Matamua is, but based on last week's performance, he deserved to be dropped.
England.
And the other person that deserved to be dropped was Ruben Porter, to be quite honest. But he remains there.
What a shame. Ruben Porter is arguably our next cab off the rank back row.
Which is extremely concerning. Let's move to Jersey Flags. 22 blotted halftime they were winning, and then they went on to lose. That's just not good enough. I don't care what grade it is. You do not lose from that position. Will Craig's binning came at the worst possible time. It was a 22 each, and that effectively sealed the win for Newcastle. But some of the defensive displays in the second half just weren't good enough. They struggled to defend second phase. You're noticing a pattern here because I am. It seems to happen in most grades, and that's what allowed Newcastle to get back in the game. And there was a couple of soft tries conceded both in the middle and on the edges, and quite frankly, it's not good enough. The positives, Joseph Lanyon, who is James's older brother, he had some nice touches in the first half. He looks quite a dynamic number 9. We seem to have no issues finding great hookers. Lachlan Broadalow, far too good for this level. Oh my God, he is a monster. He is, in terms of forwards above SG ball age, he's the back rower that should go on to do good things this year from a lower grade standpoint. I don't think he'll be making his NRL debut, but I think he's far too good for flag, and within a few weeks he should be playing on the bench in Cup. Anything else there?
No, I feel like Taylor two halves. The only way to approach a game like this is to just be like, look, I mean, you guys obviously are a good side. You just did it for 40. You need to do it for 80. I think that they'll be fine. I feel like it's a good team with a good coach. We've got good depth. Once the SG ball season ends too, there's 2 good SG ball sides to start feeding players into this flag team too. So, if by the time the SG ball season ends and they start funneling in the likes of, Jared Hayward, Marcassini, Mark Tanus, even like some of the outside backs in the lower grades like Joseph Parch, I feel like he's probably going to progress to flag based on how well he's playing.
We can talk about Joey in a sec. He had a blinder. I
love his on-field attitude, man. He's like he's the type of player that we don't really seem to unearth too much of. He's a bit of a shit talking sort of reminds me a bit of Mulatalo in his on-field demeanor.
Yeah, man. He's got a touch of class. That was a great little find given he was on a trainer trial. But I'll just run through Harold Matts. Balmain had a bye, but they play the Warriors this week in what should be an even contest. I'm not too sure whether or not they're in finals contention, but, hopefully a strong end of the season for them. For West, they play the Warriors, and it was a complete size mismatch, and the Warriors effectively skied downhill all game. It speaks to the side of this. It speaks to the fact that they're out of form because against the Bulldogs side in round 2 that were much bigger and stronger, only a month or so, they made them look stupid. So there's some issues there. And a lot of it, I think, is starting with defence. The positive, It was a nicely worked backline movement for James Lanyon to score early on. I thought the fullback, Josh Bellard, was really, really composed out the back there, and there was some nice movement and interplay from guys like Curtis Lakeman. But again, defence just wasn't up to standard. They play the Eels this week, who have a similar record. But given the form of the side, I'm not anticipating a positive result. Anything there?
Yeah, not really, man. I haven't actually seen the match this week.
Okay, well let's talk SG ball. Balmain, brilliant bounce back win. We spoke about it against South. You just flush it and you move on. This just about confirms their spot in the finals, and there was a general consensus amongst a lot of people that they just needed to win one of this last sort of four, and they'd cement their spots. They've done that, and hopefully this week against the Chooks, they can cement their place in the top four. Look, it could have gotten ugly. They were down by 2 tries early on, but they dug their heels in and they produced when it mattered. That left edge, marshalled by Cohen Benson, was amazing. Cohen himself seems to get better and better every week. He's not afraid to throw the ball around, and he scored a well-deserved try off the kickoff after some beautiful work from that guy Joey Parch and Xavier Tuai-Fainga off the kickoff. Joey had an absolute stormer, and Xavier, he didn't actually, he had some dynamic moments, but it wasn't actually his best game, and he still managed to score 2 tries.
Yeah. How good is he, man? He's a talent.
Speaks of the class of him. The other guy who's the unsung hero of the minute on that left edge is Will Stone. He's really, really classy. Managed to attract a defender, hold him in the collision and get the ball away for, I think, Zave to set up a try. He's one of the better defines this year amongst their Pathways players in a position of need. We've obviously got Byron Laupepper and Phoenix, obviously, but don't count out Will Stone. He looks really, really good. Mark Tenos, never too far away from the action, set up a gorgeous try to Joey with a beautiful cutout pass.
That was
like
nice.
I mentioned, they play the 7th place Chooks this week, and hopefully that delivers another dub. Anything there?
Yeah, it's so good to see a side that can bounce back from what happened a few weeks ago, so well. It didn't seem to change a thing. They got flogged by 50, and then it's just business as usual. Such a workman-like side, but with just enough class. It's a really impressive side. And, I'm optimistic that a lot of these guys are going to go ahead with it. And the good thing about our SG ball is we're seeing emerging talent in positions of need. We've got the likes of Xavier and Stone, as you mentioned, as centre and back row, which massive needs, and the same in the Maggie side. But I think a lot of the Tigers SG ball players are going to end up getting blooded in New South Wales Cup by the end of this year. The likes of Haywood and Tanus are going to end up playing a little bit, not heaps. They'll play more flag, but I feel like that they'll get all the way there by the end of this year, because obviously they were in the NRL trial, so they've got, they've got designs on progressing those two in particular. But I wouldn't rule out Xavier Tuai-Fainga either from getting all the way up to New South Wales Cup this year, depending on a few other things happening. I feel like he's got first grade written all over him. It's just a shame he's another left centre. We really need a right one.
We really do. Zave, I just think he might need another growth spurt. Hopefully he's still got one in him. But such a dynamic footballer, and he's just been so much fun to watch this year. The way that he bounces, the collision in attack, the way that he sets up his outside man, the way that in the red zone he runs such a hard line for a young man.
And courage angles back against the grain.
Absolutely.
I love it. It's so old school, but so. It's still so valid in the modern game, and you just don't see it as much.
Yeah, I see a lot of. It's a simple player comp, and I don't think he has a similar ceiling, but I do see a bit of Justin Hodges in the way that he bounces.
Hodges, okay.
Yeah, I really, really like him. But look, again, hopefully one that progresses through the grades this year. Credit to Xavier, he did some great things.
And on Benson, I just wanted to add, Benson, I agree with you. He's impressed me since day one. I was really surprised by how well he started the season, and he hasn't looked back. And in that game when we didn't have Haywood and Tanus, he stood up, played the dominant role, and did it well. And even from that game forward, he's sort of almost kept that level. And rather than Tanus being the dominant half, they've been pretty even share, which is fab. He reminds me a bit of Blake Lazarus. Not Blake Lazarus. Sorry, Blake Austin.
No,
He
I
reminds
didn't see that. He's tall and rangy. I don't. Austin
It's
used
just
to.
when he's like in open field, the way that he runs in open field, and like I don't know, there's just something about him that reminds me. Is it Blake Austin or somebody else that played at the Tigers that was a lower grade 6? Oh no, Gamble. I'm thinking of Gamble.
Wait,
Anyway, carry on. Tyson Gamble. Carry on.
Oh, Gamble. Yeah. Actually, that's a great comparison. I see that too.
Yeah.
Spoke about the Maggies earlier. They got over the winless Warriors. There was a concern about this being a danger game. I mentioned it last week, and it almost proved as such. But the difference was Archie Duncan. What can I say? What a player. When I saw it on the team sheet, we interviewed Mitch Tyler at the beginning of the SG ball season. I was a little concerned about the fact that he was moved to the middle, given his prowess on an edge. All of my doubts have been quashed. It's been a masterstroke. He's scoring tries at will. Beautiful pass from Denzel, by the way, to set that try up. He set up the try at the death for Cohen Lewis. He cuts the footy up. He hits like a truck. He effectively pulled this game out of the fire on his own. We need to sign him up yesterday. It's great to see Christian, Phoenix, and Jared Haywood re-sign. Archie has got to be the priority. I don't know if you saw it, but right at the death, they put the ball up. Riley Oitman, who is a small man, rose above, like climbed high into the air to take that ball to kill the game. And we've absolutely found our fullback in this side. And, we've got some really tough games then this year. It's really good to see this, this spine get the reps that it needs. The left edge was rocks and diamonds. Sonny had some good plays first half, second half, not so much. This week, they're absolutely going to need it to pretty much all come up diamonds. I'm a little bit worried about this week, but there are some good signs. There's points in this side. A Byron Lau-Pepper assist for another Macassini try. Byron's a bit slept on for mine, a little bit like Will Stone. He is such a good ball player. Phoenix is a wonderful ball player as well, but Byron, I think, is a little bit underrated in that sense. The worry and the knock on these boys is that obviously against the last place Warriors, there was some ugly defensive lapses, and that will seriously hurt them against these better sides. We've got Parramatta. I don't know who's the week after, but then we've got Canberra to finish. Both of those guys are top two. We cannot be making these same errors. So that's a worry. But ever since the early losses, every single challenge that they've had, they've risen to it. And there's a huge game this week against Parramatta. And if these boys want to play in the postseason, they need to win this week.
Yeah, it's against Manly.
That's right.
Which is pretty winnable. I think if they win 2 out of 3 of these last 2 games, they make the 8 because they're 9th and only on 4 and against. So I feel like that this weekend, if they win this weekend, it might seal top 8 for them. Frankly,
I don't see that at all. They're a point behind the Dogs, who are in 8th, and so they need to win this week to cement a place. And
that's what I'm saying. If they win this week, they will submit. I think that because I feel like they'll beat Manly. They'll beat
Manly. They're 1-5. So
and if they win this week and then beat Manly, I feel like that they should be all right. Like they've got it's a bit of a log jam. It's like they're on. 6 competition points, equal with the Sharks and the Knights, but they've got better for and against them, both of them. The Roosters and the Dogs are on 7, so they're only 1 ahead. So there's 2 teams ahead of them, 1 point ahead of them. And then you got Illawarra and the Storm on 8. So if they get to 10 competition points, there's a pretty good chance that that'll be enough for them. And I actually feel like that probably also means the Tigers are probably going to make the 8 regardless of what happens from the rest of the season onwards.
Yeah, I think for them it's just consolidating their position in the top 4. But yeah, they've
got the problem with their for and against though. Their differential is 2, even though they're 5-1.
That game against South really hurt them.
But I'm on the Maggies, man. Like, it's good to see like the boys that we picked out in the preseason starting to show their class as the season goes on. Like Godinez obviously, doing freakish things every week now, and Archie's doing great things now. Marcassini's starting to actually score points. It's just taken the Magpies a little bit of time to kind of like find their mojo. I think I feel like they're lower on the ladder than their class, substantially so, to be honest. I feel like that they're probably genuinely. The Warriors, you were right to pick out the Warriors as like a danger game, because that side is full of classy players. They're just mostly a year young. So, and they did kind of have a little bit of like a come from the clouds Harold Matts win last year. They weren't the best team in the comp until they went on a bit of a run, and a couple of other sides like the Magpies kind of shut their pants at the last minute when they really shouldn't have. But I don't think beating the Warriors by a small margin is necessarily a bad look for them, even though they're winless. I feel like that this game is going to be pretty tight, to be honest. And to be honest, the fact that the Magpies are coming ninth and the Eels are, well out in front on the ladder, 5 wins, no losses, 1 draw. I feel like it could be very easy for those Eels boys to overlook them. Given the talent in the Magpies side and given how important this match is for them, I would honestly be surprised if the Magpies lost. To be honest, I feel like that there's all the signs here that this is kind of big. If you think about it, look at it from the Eels perspective, it's kind of got that look about it of that one loss you kind of have to have, or that loss that's inevitable, like type vibe to it. The Maggies are the classy sides. I don't know. I might go out and see it because I'm down here in Sydney, so I might pop out to Lidcombe tomorrow morning and go over watch.
Yeah, you'll have to update me on how it goes. I'll be watching on Bar TV, like I think the majority of our listeners will be. Look, I agree with you. Maybe it is the loss they need to have, but also if we grant this side opportunities, they're really going to hurt us. Koinakis through the middle there, hooker, he's a great player. Right at Talangi, his reputation precedes him, and Max Popo as well, who's their lock forward. He's a very good player too. So if we allow those boys to get a roll on through the middle, they'll punish us because the defense on our edges has been shaky. So look, if these boys, can limit errors and work hard defensively, the points will come. Of that, I have no doubt. But we will see what happens tomorrow morning. Just quickly, both Tasha Gale and Lisa Fiola had a bye last week, and then AJ and LD Cup both have their final round games this week. They were postponed a week because of the cyclone. Mac, I think we're done. Any parting words?
No, just one.
So for anybody that needs a translation, trust in Benji. It's only round 1. The rest of
you're bleeping bleeps.
Yeah, that's right. I like how you cut that out at the end because I think everybody knows where that's going. Enjoy your rugby league. This is the best part of the year where we get every grade and we can watch every game. I apologise to your wives and girlfriends. I can smell a few wins this week. Go the Tigers, and if you're going out to Bank West, stock up on sunscreen and drink plenty of water. See you next week.